It's been about a month since I began looking at the flat Earth. The first time I heard about it in passing was a few months ago, and I thought it was the stupidest waste of time I'd ever heard of. Everyone knows the Earth is a globe hurling through space. I've been to Cape Canaveral to see the rocket launches that NASA once did all the time down in Florida. I heard the sonic booms from the spacecraft breaking the sound barrier as they re-entered our atmosphere from orbit. If you've ever lived in Central Florida, you'll know the bone-cracking thud that serves as a reminder of our dominion of space and NASA's mastery of the cosmos. So when I heard about the flat Earth nut jobs, I knew for a fact that these people were gullible schizophrenics who probably fell out of a turnip truck a few days ago and would believe just about anything you told them, so long as you're wearing your tinfoil hat. This would be a perfect research project to hone my skills as an investigative journalist, and perhaps I could talk a few of these people away from the edge, as it were. But the more I looked into it, the more I realized that these flat Earth facts were rather logical. I was reminded of some issues with the globe model, which I've sort of stored in the back of my mind as something for the smart guys at NASA to worry about, and apologize for those facts to myself. Boy, am I glad we have all those smart guys at NASA, though, to do all our thinking for us. We don't even need to bother looking at the stars anymore because the smart guys at NASA also have that covered. Where would we be without all those smart guys at NASA? Funnily enough, I began second-guessing myself as the evidence was mounting in favor of a flat Earth. I would reassure myself, "Don't worry, John. This is just some weird coincidence. You know you're on a spinning globe hurling through space. So just go back to looking into the important things like who's going to be the next president? Will it be Hillary Obama or maybe Barack Clinton? Maybe it'll be Jeb Obama or possibly Hillary Bush. So many excellent candidates to choose from. If only I were a billionaire Chinese person with stock in the Federal Reserve. I'd be very excited about this next election." But I digress. Slowly I became more and more aware that the flat Earth not only accounts for all the conundrums involving the globe model, but also lacks the preconceived fallacies which I took to the flat Earth table like so many pieces of ammunition. And as my ammunition failed, one by one proving to be duds, I kept reassuring myself, "Don't worry, John. You're on a giant globe spinning around the sun at breakneck speed hurling through space." No matter what evidence I seemed to find in favor of the flat Earth, there was always this nagging rationalization in the back of my mind which comforted me, with images of our little blue world 3 doors down from the sun. I started trying to find more and more information on the flat Earth, really to find something that would confirm my better judgment, and I use the term loosely. So I happened to find people like Mark Sargent. Out of all the stuff I watched on the flat Earth, Mark Sargent was the one who seemed the most genuine, and seemed to understand it better than anyone. Except, Mark Sargent has a way of mentioning little tidbits about the flat Earth, which are a big relief to the rational part of my mind telling me to run away from the crazy flat Earth theory. Mark Sargent seemed to make everything okay to my nagging rationalization. But now that Mark Sargent has created all of this doubt in my mind about the flat Earth, my nagging rationalization sort of did a 180 on me, started poking me with questions like, wait, what about the flight times? What about gravity? What about NASA faking the moon landings? What about the North Star Polaris? So I sort of became obsessed with it. I started researching everything I could prove, one way or another, just to ensure that I'm understanding reality property, because there was a conflict here. And one day, it finally hit me. The empirical preponderance of evidence only points to a flat Earth. And the very same evidence flies in the face of the globular speck of dust hurling through space around the sun. One by one, all of the preconceived fallacies I had learned from the old wives' tales became obvious fiction, and all of the evidence, meaning facts, indeed proved that the globe was a hoax, and our world is indeed flat, stationary, and the North Pole is the magnetic center of our known universe. All the celestial bodies revolve around the magnetic center, or the North Pole. So if you can get past the programming, as I did, although I didn't realize it at the time, it was a rather bloody internal struggle, to be honest. The flat earth is sublime in its logic, peaceful in its simplicity, and intriguing with its possibilities. If you want to know my take on the possible motives, check out my video, Flat Earth, the Nazis of NASA and the Infinite Plane. Or, if you'd like to know the original proof of concept which helped me to firmly realize the truth and abandon that nagging rationalization in the back of my mind, also known as the programming, I invite you to take a look at my other Flat Earth video, 100% Irrefutable Proof. The globe is a hoax. So, motive and proof seemed like a great start, maybe even an end to my mission for the last month or so. However, it seems that while the physics surrounding the flat earth model are simple, logically sound, and easily verifiable, the pure truth which I have pointed to previously is somehow falling on deaf ears. I couldn't understand how these seemingly simple facts were well beyond the understanding of the average person. But the same applies to self-proclaimed physics geniuses, flight engineers, and other scientific types who should have no problem understanding such sound and simple logic. These are not stupid people, so why are they having such a hard time understanding? Well, it seems like I've forgotten about that internal struggle, which took me about a week to complete, but again, I was sort of obsessed. This is why I made this video. I've realized that it's not about understanding the logic. Again, the logic is 100% sound, verifiable, and rather obvious. This isn't the problem. The problem is each individual person must battle against their own nagging rationalism, or the programming. Without overcoming one's own programming, our better judgment, again using the term loosely, will simply not allow an average person or even an extremely brilliant person to even consider for one single microsecond that our world is anything but a globe hurling through space, lost in a vast, empty sea, with not one single neighbor in sight. I've stated before that I don't expect anyone to watch a video and drastically alter their paradigm. That would be naive of me, and it simply doesn't work that way. What I can do, however, is provide as much simple logic which opposes the conventional accepted model and agrees with the true, correct flat earth model. Furthermore, I have enough experience in showing people this particular truth that I'm pretty much aware of most of the counter-arguments. Because again, I've been through this myself as well. These counter-arguments I will attempt to address to the best of my ability. I will state that I've just learned to use an animation program in the last couple of weeks, so forgive me for the juvenile appearance of the animations, but I think it does illustrate the points that I'm making. And specifically to attempt submitting such evidence to my virtual friends, neighbors, and colleagues on YouTube and other such venues is my #1 mission. If you're just stumbling across the flat earth for the first time, I can assure you this is not a joke, and I will implore you to try and leave your nagging rationalism at the door. I'm not asking you to abandon critical thinking. On the contrary, I hope that you can utilize your best discernment. However, please check your prejudices and preconceived notions at the door. I'm open to comments, questions, and vulgar rants, but please be patient with me. I've been working on this particular video for the last few days, and so I've fallen rather behind on replying to comments. I hope you understand. I will do my best to reply to all comments and questions, and I hope you all enjoy watching this as much as I enjoyed producing the film. God bless you all. I think I had picked up from Matt Boylan. Basically, the North Star Polaris has maintained an unwavering alignment with our North Pole for as long as people have been navigating by the stars. That's a pretty long time. I remember hearing something, and I may be wrong, but I remember hearing something about the North Star changing. Anyway, so in this example, the North Star Polaris should be somewhere way up and to the left, right? Because that's the way the Earth is oriented. Now, however, the axis which the Earth spins upon is wobbling. It's called axial precession, which is supposedly what causes the precession of the equinoxes. The axis supposedly completes this wobble every 26,000 years. So how is it possible for the North Star Polaris to maintain its perfect alignment when the axis has completed even a fraction of a wobble? If you look at this rather poor animation, admittedly, but you can see once this thing is wobbled, say, 180 degrees, well, now the North Star Polaris should be somewhere way up and to the right. Okay, so I know that's not proper space coordinates lingo, but you see what I'm saying. It's impossible for the North Star Polaris, or any star for that matter, to maintain any such alignment with for any significant duration. It's impossible. There's no way in hell. Okay? You can't argue the North Star. Can't argue it. You can't argue the precession of the equinoxes, the wobble. You cannot argue that. So many people do. I've already talked about the reasons why. The problem with gravity. Which one? My other video I covered how gravity was invented to account for the Earth spinning at 1,000 miles an hour. It was a theory dreamed up to explain why we're not flung from the face of the Earth, spinning 1,000 miles per hour near the equator. Quotes, equator. Except, if gravity was indeed pushing down with enough force to keep you pinned to the Earth, spinning 1,000 miles per hour near the, quote, equator, what would that much pressure do to you if you're standing, say, 100 feet from the North Pole? You're only traveling a fraction of the distance in the same amount of time, which means you are traveling more slowly standing at the North Pole than compared to the equator. So since the Earth is supposedly spinning at the axis, the North Pole, then the farther away you stand from the axis, the faster you should be traveling. Okay? While one rotation near the equator traverses thousands of miles in 24 hours, one rotation near the axis, the North Pole, would only travel a few miles during a 24-hour period. How can anyone possibly travel to the North Pole and not be squashed by gravity? It doesn't work. You can't argue with this. Near the axis, you would only travel less than 1 mile per hour, and near the equator, you would travel 1,000+ miles an hour. Okay, so you've got two different amounts of centripetal force. You ever been on a merry-go-round, the gravitron at the fair? It pushes you away from the center. It's beyond ridiculous to assert that the centripetal force somehow doesn't apply to the spinning Earth. And that's what these physics guys are trying to do. They're trying to say, oh, it doesn't apply to the Earth. Bullshit, okay? Bullshit. The laws of physics apply to all objects found in nature. You can't break the laws of physics to suit your argument. That's not how it works. Weights, strings, and cannons. This is a little more fun. I'm not going to prove anything wrong about the Earth unless you don't apply to physics, then maybe I will be. Okay, so if you take a string, spin it around on a weight, this is a highly complex, expensive experiment. Do not try this at home. That is if you wish to continue believing in the Santa Globe. Other way, I'm going that way this time. Other way, I'm going that way this time. That way this time. Okay, so do you see when I throw this thing, does it keep traveling in a circle or does it go in a straight line from the point where I let go? If you spin a weight on a length of string, when you let go of the string, what happens? The weight will travel in a straight line. As you spin the weight and let go, the kinetic energy is released and the spin is severed. The laws of motion dictate that the weight will maintain its forward velocity. Try to keep this in mind when considering the flat Earth. Okay? This is a law of physics. International Flat Earth Research Society, IFRS, documented the results of a study that I thought was very impressive about multiple cannons firing simultaneously, perfectly vertical. Now, this is what you should see on the spinning Earth. Remember the string. The ball is going to go straight when it's released from the spin, okay? So the Earth traveling east at 1,000 miles per hour, the cannon is going to travel away from the point where it was fired. Okay, so just like the string, the spinning force is severed, and the abundant force of the explosion, if you're talking about the laws of motion, we're talking about some other force that would count. Okay? Now, what you saw is how it should work, or what you should see on the spinning globe. Now, during the actual experiment that was done under controlled conditions, again, multiple cannons simultaneously, invariably, the ball landed within a couple of feet of the cannon that fired it. And in many cases, the ball landed directly back into the barrel of the cannon that fired it. Okay? So, you can talk to me all you want about you're a physics professor. I don't give a shit. You're a brainwashed physics professor, or whatever it is, Ivy League, whatever. This proves, and you can't argue with this, that our Earth is not a spinning globe. And people are still clinging to the false globe model in their brain, and they're going to try to argue this point with total nonsense. Total nonsense. I don't care what books you copy and paste from, what you copy and paste from. You don't know what you're talking about. You don't comprehend it. You're in a major state of denial, and you're never going to admit you're wrong until you break the programming. Now, you must concur with the laws of physics and valiantly admit that you were wrong. Period. And please, help someone you know break the programming. Subjective laws of perspective. Another fun one. A lot of people ask, well, if it's not a globe, then why can't we see the west coast of Europe from the east coast of U.S.? That's about 3,500 miles. Now, this is supposedly due to the curve of the Earth. That's what everyone says. Now, the laws of perspective are subjective, although they apply to everything that we can see that happens to be near the plane or near the surface that we're on. Okay? So things that are nearby sort of act like this relative to you. The farther away they get, the smaller and smaller, and higher up towards the horizon they get. Okay? Even very large items will appear smaller and smaller until they get behind the vanishing point. And then once they get behind the terminating point, vanishing point, they get exponentially smaller, and they go sort of behind the horizon. You can see when it's going forward towards the horizon, it goes up, 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 up. And there's videos of this. Eric Dubay has videos of ships at miles and miles behind the horizon, and they're not tilted over. Okay, the entire continent of Europe, when viewed from 3,500 miles away, would be smaller than a flea a mile away. And it's behind the horizon. Not to mention 3,500 miles of atmospheric distortion, waves, clouds, steam, whatever. You're not going to see Europe from the East Coast on any shaped globe, period. Doesn't mean, just because you can't see Europe from the East Coast of the U.S. doesn't mean we're on a globe. It's the laws of perspective. Identical flight durations, conundrum. It's another thing you can't argue with, and I'll try to illustrate it because some people try to apply false logic. Now, the westbound flight from New York to LA should enjoy a very fast flight because the Earth is spinning towards it at 1,000 miles per hour. And the plane is going 500 miles per hour. Don't talk to me about the perpetual motion of the Earth. You cut the string and the weight, or you let go of the string and the weight goes in a straight line. Okay, so you cut the spinning force and the weight goes in a straight line. Once some other force is acted upon it, that could be the kinetic energy of letting go of the string, or several jet engines attached to the plane. The eastbound flight should never arrive As the spinning Earth is flying faster than the average commercial flight's 500, the Earth goes over 1,000 miles per hour at the equator, a little bit less than 1,000 miles per hour in the US, but the fact of the matter is most commercial flights do 500 miles per hour. You should never ever ever see an eastbound flight, because it just wouldn't, the plane would be flying backwards through the sky if we were on a spinning globe. That's how it would look. Well, not just like that. It's not to scale. And yeah, I think I put that in here. I know I'm going to get flamed because it wasn't to scale, but just so you know, it would be impossible to draw this to scale. So just I want to try to avoid that question. The spinning Earth is a false model. It's proven. And FYI, this example was not drawn to scale. There you go. Speeding trains in a rocket pack. This is another example. Everyone says, oh, well, you don't know that if you're on a train and you jump from one side to the other, you don't go flying towards the back of the train, right? I've probably heard that 75, it's really probably closer to 100 times from 100 different people, basically asking me, don't you know the laws of motion? If you're on a moving train and you jump from one side to the other, you don't fly towards the rear of the train, right? Well, no shit, Sherlock. I've heard this argument 75, maybe 100 times in the last 3 weeks. If you forget to account for the jet engines attached to the commercial jetliner in your analogy, which you thought was so clever, but it wasn't. If you were atop a train going 75 miles per hour, and you plan to fire 2 identical rockets, one from the front to the back while the train's going forward, and the other from the back to the front, again while the train's going 75 miles per hour, and let's just say for argument's sake that the rockets had a terminal velocity of only 75 miles per hour, which is exactly how fast the train happens to be going in this example. And believe it or not, I'm actually giving the globe model a huge head start on that. Terminal velocity is not just a Wesley Snipes movie, guys. Okay? Terminal velocity is the ratio between thrust and drag. That's all it is. How much thrust do you have, and how much is the air pushing back? That's what aerodynamics is. Now, the average commercial flight has a terminal velocity of about 500 miles per hour. Okay? Sure, planes can go faster than that, but an average commercial flight. Now, 500 miles per hour is less than 1/2 of the Earth's spin near the equator. Again, that's 1,000 miles per hour east. So, in this example, the rocket doing 75 is actually skewed in the favor of the globe theory, because it's going the same speed as the train. The plane can only go half the speed as the Earth, so it doesn't even stand a chance. Okay? But if you just pay attention to this animation, you'll see, and it's we're not in a vacuum here, folks. The rocket traveling towards the rear of the train would be going 150 miles per hour relative to the train. It's only doing 75 through the air because that's its terminal velocity in this example. Now, the rocket traveling towards the front of the train would be traveling at 0 miles per hour relative to the train, since they're both traveling in the same direction. If you try to argue with this, you don't understand physics. Okay? It's not me. It's you that doesn't understand. Now, do you still believe a flight from New York to LA could possibly, in any miracle, have identical duration to its 2,500 mile return flight on a globe spinning 1,000 miles per hour eastward? If so, please send my regards to the Easter Bunny. Farewell to the globe. This is going to be the last section of this video, but I'm just going to throw up a map of the flat Earth, because that is what it is. I mean, it is what it is. So there's no use explaining it. You know, if you want to look at it, study it, learn more, you know, whatever. That's what it is. This is why we're able to circumnavigate the globe, and I did cover this in another video, but I'll just mention it since we're looking at this map. The North Pole's in the center. What we know is Antarctica is enveloping all the seas 360 degrees around, sort of a giant retaining wall. And my assertion is, or my best guess is, it's probably just the beginning, truly, of the frontier. It could prove otherwise. Nobody really knows for sure. Well, somebody does, but nobody that's going to tell. So